Hi, welcome back to Kingdom Portions here in Kingdom in Context. I'm Sean Griffin, and I'm accompanied by my incredible and lovely wife.
Hey guys, I'm Lindsay. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, sweetie.
Shabbat Shalom, love.
Thank you for joining us, folks. This is Kingdom Portions, and we go through the Torah portions with a focus and emphasis on the gospel of the Kingdom of God, since it's layered everywhere throughout. This particular episode is called Kingdom Melchizedek because this is a fun one. I think this is going to be a fun one. So we're going to be going over Numbers chapter 25, verse 10, all the way through the end of chapter 29, verse 40. And we're glad that you've joined us. So if this is your first time to see Kingdom in Context, please go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell so you'll be notified whenever we put out new videos and you don't miss anything. Also, you can check in the links below if you want to get some merch, right? Some Kingdom in Context stuff. And then there's also Honor at Kings shirts and sweaters and hoodies on there as well. Honor at Kings is a show, if you're not familiar, it's a show that we do on Saturday nights. And that's a show we do with our buddy Ken Heiderbrecht from Hanging on His Words YouTube channel. And the whole purpose of that show is simply looking at the apocryphal books and books that were never put into the American canon, as well as the apocryphals that were taken out of the American canon. We look at those books and we try to test them to the modern American canon of 66 that we still have to see if they hold up or not, to see if they're valid or not. So it's a fun show. You're welcome to join us over there as well. And also on Sundays we have Torah Apologetics. That is where we're doing apologetics from all angles through the lens of Torah. And come join us if you haven't seen those episodes as well. Would you like to tell them about our social media group?
Yes. So Facebook is just a much more user-friendly app as far as notifying us when people comment, when there's threads going on, things like that. Far better than YouTube. So we do have a Facebook group. It's called Kingdom in Context / Hanging on His Words Study Group. And we, do online fellowship there. If you've got questions about things we teach, if you need prayer, if you just are looking for fellowship in your area, we do have a pinned post up at the top for everyone to drop their location in case you want to network with people in the same area as you. And so, you're much more likely to get a response from Sean or I, or both of us, through that social media platform rather than YouTube, because a lot of times we don't even get notifications about comments.
So you're welcome to come visit us over there as well. Also, we want to announce that this will be, I think, the third to last episode of Kingdom Portions that we're doing for this year. So we've gone all the way through, even though we started last year around this time, we started in Deuteronomy, in the first of Deuteronomy, but we've worked our way through Deuteronomy. Right. We went back to Genesis, worked our way through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and now we'll be finishing Numbers soon. And we'll have done the entire Torah portions throughout the year. And so we are actually going to be taking a break from Kingdom Portions. I will still be uploading Kingdom Portions every week according to the portion schedule. But they're not going to be brand new episodes because we're going to take a year off. Yeah. So I'm sorry if that disappoints some people, but at the same time, we've got a lot of other really cool and positive things that are happening with Kingdom in Context. I can't share everything with you right now because some of the things are still in progress. And then also your business is kicking off. Yeah. So we just do not have the time, and we have all these other videos of Kingdom Portions that, there's a lot of fun stuff that we talked about in each week at Kingdom Portions that no one even ever asks us about.
Yeah, I think that our Kingdom Portions are meaty enough that we can re-upload the things we were uploading last year, and it'll be like you haven't even seen it again. I mean, it's been a whole year.
It has.
So
we've gotten a better microphone in the last year.
Yeah, so apologies in advance. When we started last year, we just had a little laptop, and I don't even think we had a microphone at first.
They didn't have a nice one.
So the quality of our videos have improved over time, but the content is still the same. It's still just as meaty. Yeah. We go through Deuteronomy. We've got some real in-depth discussions in there, and we were putting those out when our channel was a little smaller, so a lot of people haven't even seen those portions. So we're going to go ahead and just re-upload those to keep people on schedule if they like to have something to watch every week on the Sabbath, as far as a Torah study goes. But we're going to take some time off. We both work day jobs. We both are juggling all second jobs and third jobs and things like that. So,
Yeah, so we're still going to be doing Honor Kings, Torah Apologetics, periodic Morning Cup of Contexts, as well as a new daily show Monday through Friday I'll be doing that's called Milk and Meats.
So we've got a lot of fun things coming to Kingdom of Context, but this particular series, we're going to take a pause since we've completed. We'll have completed a year at that point. So, and as always, once we re-upload ones that we've done from last year's Torah portion, if you have questions about it, we still will address those. We're still going to interact with the video, and if you have any questions, to the best of our ability and our time, which is also why we mentioned the Facebook group, because that's an easier way for us to interact. It's quicker, notifies us better. So we're still here, we're still available. It's just, we're taking a break on this particular series. So, and then I think in year 3, we're going to pick it back up again.
Possibly.
So, and we've got even more things coming to Kingdom of Context that I can't share with you at the moment. So, I'm excited, and I just want to encourage everyone to be excited, because there's very, very positive things coming, and we're excited.
Yeah.
So, let's jump into the Torah portion this week. It's going to be Numbers chapter 25, and we're going to start in verse 10.
Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Phinehas the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, has turned away my wrath from the sons of Israel, in that he was jealous with my jealousy among them, so that I did not destroy the sons of Israel in my jealousy. Therefore say, Behold, I give him my covenant of peace, and it shall be for him and his descendants after him a covenant of a perpetual priesthood, because he was jealous for his God and made atonement for the sons of Israel. Now the name of the slain man of Israel who was slain with the Midianite woman was Zimri, the son of Salu, a leader of a father's household among the Simeonites. The name of the Midianite woman who was slain was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur, who was head of the people of a father's household in Midian. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Be hostile to the Midianites and strike them, for they have been hostile to you with their tricks, with which they have deceived you in the affair of Peor, and in the affair of Cosbi, the daughter of the leader of Midian, their sister who was slain on the day of the plague because of Peor.
Thank you, sweetie.
You're welcome.
All right, Numbers chapter 25. Last week, the way the Torah portion ended last week, we stopped right in the middle of 25. They had the plague break out because the Israelites, or some of them, we found out which ones of them, right?
Yeah.
Some of them went out, the Simeonites went out and went and basically partied with the Midianites, and they partied to Baal.
Right.
So that's not a good thing, guys. Whenever that happens, there's not good stuff that goes down. So they came back, plague broke out, they had to make atonement to stop the plague for the people, and then unfortunately there was capital punishment that happened because of the plague. Just 24,000 people died total. And then we see what was actually going down and why it was such a big deal that Phinehas had to go kill that Simeonite that straggled back the next morning with the Midianite woman.
Right. Because
she was actually a daughter of one of the Midianite leaders, which is a big deal. So what sticks out to you, sweetie?
Oh, well, I think it's interesting here that, we see this covenant of peace being mentioned with Phinehas, because if you don't understand how the Father has written his word, how he's laid it out, you would think that this is like a new covenant being made just with Phinehas, but he's the grandson of Aaron. So Aaron is also a Levite. That covenant of peace was originally made with Levi.
That's right.
Then the high priesthood comes to Aaron, and then his lineage on down. So this is a reiteration of that covenant, just like we see the Father repeats himself all the time.
And there's literally a verse that explains that in Malachi chapter 2, verses 4 through 9. Yahweh is reprimanding Levites who weren't doing their job during the days of apostasy, and during the days of Malachi. And so he's actually telling them, I made a covenant of peace with Levi, who was upright, righteous. He did what I said. He was a good priest for me. So this is why Aaron was even chosen, because his ancestor, one of the sons of Jacob, Levi, was given the priesthood. This is told to us in Testament of Levi, as well as Jubilees chapter 32. Mm-hmm. So, which is reaffirmed in Malachi chapter 2 by the Father, and also here in Numbers 25. So this is, totally agree with what you're saying. It's just a reaffirmation, because that was why Levi got the priesthood to begin with as well, because he acted like Phinehas and was zealous for the Father's commands. Right. This was it was what the priests were supposed to be. Right. They were supposed to be set apart because their behavior was more obedient than the rest of the people. Like, they really loved doing what the Father wanted. Right. That was what it means to be zealous for his law. So it's a reaffirmation. Absolutely, it's not really a brand new covenant.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else in this chapter sticks out?
It's probably enough.
Let's go to chapter 26, and I'll start reading. This is going to be a fun chapter because there's a lot of really tough words.
Don't look at me like that. I have no idea what you're talking about.
In chapter 26, verse 1, And then it came about after the plague that the Lord spoke to Moses and to Eleazar the son of Aaron the priest, and he's saying, Take a census of all the congregation of the sons of Israel from 20 years old and upward, by their fathers' households, whomever is able to go out to war in Israel. So Moses and Eleazar the priest spoke with them in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, Take a census of the people from 20 years old and upward, as the Lord has commanded Moses. Now the sons of Israel who came out of the land of Egypt were Reuben, Israel's firstborn. The sons of Reuben were of Hanok, or Enoch, the family of the Enochites, of Palu, the family of the Paluites, of Hezron, the family of the Hezronites, of Carmi, the family of the Carmites. These are the families of the Reubenites, and those who were numbered of them were 43,730. The sons of Palu were Eliab, and the sons of Eliab were Nemiel, Dathan, Abiram. These are the Dathan and Abiram who were called by the congregation who contended against Moses and against Aaron in the company of Korah, when they contended against the Lord. And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up along with Korah, when that company died, when the fire devoured 250 men, so that they became a warning. The sons of Korah, however, did not die. The sons of Simeon, according to their families, of Nemuel, the family of the Nemuelites, of Jamin, the family of the Geminites, of Jachin, the family of the Jachinites, of Zerah, the family of the Zerites, of Shaul, the family of the Shaulites. These are the families of the Simeonites, 22,200. The sons of Gad, according to their families, of Zephon, the family of the Zephonites, of Haggai, the family of the Haggites, of Shuni, the family of the Shunites, of Ozni, the family of the Oznites, of Eri, the family of the Erites, and of Arod, the family of the Arodites, and of Areli, the family of the Arelites. These are the families of the sons of Gad, according to those who were numbered of them, 40,500. The sons of Judah were and Onan, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Judah, according to their families, were Shelah, the families of the Shelonites of Perez, the families of the Perizzites of Zerah, the families of the Zerites. The sons of Perez were Hezron, the family of the Hezronites, of Hamul, the family of the Hamilites. These are the families of Judah according to those who were numbered among them, 76,500. The sons of Issachar, according to their families, of Tola, the family of the Tolites, of Puvah, the family of the Punites, of Jashub, the family of the Jashubites, of Shimron, the family of the Shimronites. These are the families of Issachar, according to those who were numbered of them, 64,300. The sons of Zebulun, according to their families, of Sered, the family of the Seredites, of Elon, the family of the Elonites, of Jalil, the family of the Jalilites. These are the families of the Zebulunites, according to those who were numbered of them, 60,500. The sons of Joseph, according to their families, Manasseh and Ephraim. The sons of Manasseh were of Machir, the family of the Mecharites, and Machir became the father of Gilead, and of Gilead the father of the Gileadites. These are the sons of Gilead, of Ezer, the family of the Ezerites, of Helek, the family of the Helekites, of Azrael, the family of the Azraelites, of Shechem, the family of the Shechemites, and of Shemida, the family of the Shemidites, and of Hefer, the family of the Heferites. Now Zelophehad, the son of Hefer, had no sons, but only daughters, and the names of the daughters of Zelophehad were Mahlah, Noah, Hagla, Milcah, and Tirzah. These are the families of Manasseh, and of those who were numbered among them were 52,700. These are the sons of Ephraim, according to their families, of Shuthelah, the family of the Shuthelahites, of Becher, the family of the Becherites, of Tahan, the family of the Tahanites. These are the sons of Shulatha, of Aaron, and the family of the Aaronites. These are the families of the sons of Ephraim, according to those who were numbered of them, 32,500. These are the sons of Joseph, according to their families. The sons of Benjamin, according to their families, of Bela, the families of the Belites, of Ashbel, the family of the Ashbelites, of Abiram, the family of the Ahiramites, of Shephuvam, the family of the Shephumites, of Hupham, the family of the Huphamites. The sons of Beta were Ard and Neman, and Ard, the family of the Ardites, of Neman, the family of the Naamanites. These are the sons of Benjamin according to their families, and those who were numbered of them were 45,600. These are the sons of Dan according to their families, of Shuham, the family of the Shuamites. These are the families of Dan according to their families. All the families of the Shuamites, according to those who were numbered of them, were 64,400. The sons of Asher, according to their families, of Imnah, the family of the Imanites, of Ishvi, the family of the Ishvites, of Beriah, the family of the Berites, of the sons of Beriah, of Heber, the family of the Eberites, of Malchiel, the family of the Malchielites. The name of the daughter of Asher was Sarah, and these are the families of the sons of Asher, according to those who were numbered of them. It was 53,400. The sons of Naphtali, according to their families, of Jaziel, the family of the Jazielites, of Guni, the family of the Guniites,
Of Jezer, the family of the Jezerites. Of Shillem, the family of the Shillemites. These are the families of Naphtali, according to their families, and those who were numbered of them were 45,400. These are those who were numbered of the sons of Israel, 601,730. And then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Among these the land shall be divided for an inheritance among to the number of the names. To the larger group you shall increase their inheritance, and to the smaller group you shall diminish their inheritance. Each shall be given their inheritance according to those who were numbered of them. But the land shall be divided by lots. They shall receive their inheritance according to the names of the tribes of their fathers. According to the section by lot, their inheritance shall be divided between the larger and the smaller groups. These are those who were numbered of the Levites, according to the families of Gershom, the family of the Gershonites. Of Kohath, the family of the Kohathites. Of Merari, the family of the Merarites. These are the families of Levi. The family of the Libnites, the family of the Hebronites, the families of the Mahalites, the families of the Mushites, the families of the Korites. And the Kohath became the father of Amram. The name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi. He was born to Levi in Egypt, and she bore to Amram Aaron and Moses and their sister Miriam. To Aaron were born Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. But Nadab and Abihu died when they offered strange fire before the Lord. Those who were numbered of them were 23,000, every male from a month old and upward. They were not numbered among the sons of Israel, since no inheritance was given to them among the sons of Israel. These are those who were numbered by Moses and Eleazar the priest, who numbered the sons of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. But among these there was not a man of those who were numbered by Moses and Aaron the priest, who numbered the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For the Lord had said of them, They shall surely die in the wilderness, and not a man was left of them, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua the son of Nun. All right, it's a longer chapter. Thanks for bearing with us, guys. Doing another census like they did in chapter 1. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it tells us at the very end, right? Remember, God had promised that first generation, they were all going to die in the desert before the second generation, the children, he would take them with Joshua and Caleb across the Jordan into the promised land. So this is that moment. This is the fulfillment of what was promised 40 years earlier. So, in that sense, if the Father's making immediate promises, this is the fulfillment of that immediate promise in the storyline. So this is a great point of context for what was promised back in, back in Leviticus, right? Right. Yeah. So what sticks out to you, sweetie?
Well, we're going to talk more about it once we get into chapter 27. But we've got over here in verse 33 where this guy Zelophehad, a son of Heifer, how he had no sons, and so it just lists off all his daughters instead. Yeah. So that might seem kind of random if you don't go to read the next chapter. So we're going to get into the next chapter, and we're going to see something that I'm passionate about if you guys watch this channel, which is women's rights in the Bible. Because I used to be a total feminazi, and I used to think that this book oppressed women. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm walking with Christ and I'm reading with his spirit in me, I see all over the place where the Father is protecting his daughters. And
all over the place.
Yeah, all over the place. We're not oppressed in this book. We are well taken care of according to the rules in this book.
So when it mentions those daughters, since that heifer had no sons, he just said, 4 or 5 daughters?
Yes. You
might think, well, why is that important? Why is he mentioning these daughters?
Right.
Well, we're going to cover it immediately in the next chapter, so that's just something to keep in mind. But you want to start with chapter 27?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Then the daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Heifer, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, of the families of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, came near, and these are the names of his daughters: Mahlah, Noah, and Hoglah, and Milcah, and Tirzah. They stood before Moses and before Eleazar the priest and before the leaders and all the congregation at the doorway of the tent of meeting, saying, Our father died in the wilderness, yet he was not among the company of those who gathered themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but he died in his own sin, and he had no sons. Why should the name of our father be withdrawn from among his family because he had no son? Give us a possession among our father's brothers. So Moses brought their case before the Lord. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, The daughters of Zelophehad are right in their statements. You shall surely give them a hereditary possession among their father's brothers, and you shall transfer the inheritance of their father to them. Further, you shall speak to the sons of Israel, saying, If a man dies and has no son, then you shall transfer his inheritance to his daughter. If he has no daughter, then you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. If he has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his father's brothers. If his father has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his nearest relative in his own family, and he shall possess it. And it shall be a statutory ordinance to the sons of Israel, just as the Lord commanded Moses. Then the Lord said to Moses, Go up to this mountain of Abarim. Let me start that over. Then the Lord said to Moses, Go up to this mountain of Abarim, and see the land which I have given to the sons of Israel. When you have seen it, you too will be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother was. For in the wilderness of Zin, during the strife of the congregation, you rebelled against my command to treat me as holy before their eyes at the water. These are the waters of Meribah of Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. Then Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, May the Lord, the God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the congregation, who will go out and come in before them, and who will lead them out and bring them in, so that the congregation of the Lord will not be like sheep which have no shepherd. So the Lord said to Moses, Take Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him, and have him stand before Eleazar the priest, and before all the congregation, and commission him in their sight. You shall put some of your authority on him, in order that all the congregation of the sons of Israel may obey him. Moreover, he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire for him by the judgment of the Urim before the Lord. At his command they shall go out, and at his command they shall come in, both he and the sons of Israel with him, even all the congregation. Moses did just as the Lord commanded him, and he took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation. Then he laid his hands on him and commissioned him, just as the Lord had spoken through Moses.
Thank you very much, sweetie.
Yeah.
All right, so now we've got that more information on these daughters and why that focus was drawn on them amidst all that census in the previous chapter 26. Because this was an outstanding issue that needed to be resolved.
Right.
So if you're giving out land for inheritance and a guy comes up who's got no sons, and the tradition was the men got the land inheritance because the wives would marry into someone else's land inheritance.
Right.
But yet you got an issue here with these 4 daughters. Was it 5 daughters? 4 daughters?
4 or 5.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't remember.
It was a few.
Yeah. So you've got an issue here, and then they bring it to Moses, and what happens?
Father says they're right. They're
Right.
right in their statements. They deserve an inheritance, and here you
go.
go.
So not Moses.
Right.
Moses didn't decide this. Yahweh decided this. So
Right.
this was a big difference. So Yahweh is saying from his law, the same law that he would keep in heaven, right? So from his eternal decree and ordinance, these women, if there's no son, go ahead and give the inheritance to the woman.
Yeah.
It's completely equal.
Yeah, when they walk up to Moses and say, hey, our father passed, we have no brothers, were they shunned and said, shut your mouths, you're women, doesn't matter, get out of here?
They were given the same respect as all the men.
They were allowed to boldly approach Moses and say, here's the problem, please inquire the Lord for a solution. And the Lord agreed with them.
That's right.
So to me, it's, a significant, powerful moment, just coming from the background that I come from, where I used to think that this was a book that just was completely oppressive to women, but I'm seeing it now.
That is what a lot of atheists and
Yes.
antagonists of Scripture, that's what they believe, but simply because they haven't read it. That's
Right.
the big issue. Or they've read like snippets of it out of context, and they just truly haven't actually read it. But yeah, that's why this is a beautiful story, because now these women can go off and have literally their own land. So this is, so suddenly all the Torah commands about having your own land suddenly applies to these women,
Right.
just as much as it would a man, which is how it's always been, right? So, it's like the commands were for men and women. Everyone is a part of the covenant with Israel. These commands all apply to everybody.
Yeah.
Just depends on the context of the usage, right? Which commands do you fall under? And that's kind of the way it is today. People ask us all the time, oh, so wait, I'm starting to realize, this is what people say to us.
Yeah.
I'm starting to realize that the commands are relevant for us today as Christians, that we should be keeping them. Since technically we're already keeping them, right?
Yeah.
But as far as knowing the fullness of them and realizing what all may apply to me, but then they get kind of overwhelmed. And so they say, well, oh my gosh, there's like over 600. How can I keep them? You know what I mean? But technically, 600 doesn't apply to you, right? Because you're not a priest, so you can pull out about 300 commands right there.
Yeah.
So it just depends on who you are, and this is what it takes us to read, so we can see, for us, for you in your life, your circumstance, your vocation, your lot in life. Are you married? Are you single? Whatever. Do you have children? Those commands only apply to you if you fit within the parameters of those instructions.
Yeah, and I just want to say that even if it were true, and it's not true, but even if all 613 laws applied to every single person, that is not scary to me in the face of living in a land where There's like over 40,000 laws just on a federal level. There's so many laws, I don't know how anyone would be able to count them. There's laws from the 1800s that are still on the books that aren't even applied today, but they're still in effect. They still technically are, if someone broke them somewhere, they could be charged with something. But I would say that I consider myself a law-abiding citizen in the United States. Even though there's so many laws, I have no idea which ones I'm really following on the minute levels. I mean, are my fence posts in the right place? Am I up to building code? Like those kind of things. I mean, I follow the speed limit. I do all the regular, obvious things. But I just want to point out that if you mention to someone that you're Torah observant and they say, how do you keep all of those laws? That's such a burden. I would just ask them, well, how do you keep all the laws in the U.S.? That's a burden, but you're a law-abiding citizen, right? Yeah. So to me, this 613 big scary number thing
was created arbitrarily by a rabbi a long time ago.
Right.
And many of those 613 numbers comes from commands of like take out Amalekite.
Right.
Right. From Exodus 17 or whatever. So it's an arbitrary number and it's not accurate. It's just that is more misinformation from Judaism that gets believers off the track, because Judaism has even more than that they pile on, which is what Jesus was constantly addressing. Mark 7 is a wonderful chapter showing Jesus was telling them, hey, you don't even keep the law of God anyway, and you're adding your own traditions and putting that as a burden on the people. Whereas in Matthew 11, Yeshua said, his burden is light, his yoke is easy. It's not an actual burden to do what's called the law of liberty, which gives you love and peace.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's literally the behavior of Yahweh, according to Psalm 119, verses 1 through 3, and many other spots, Deuteronomy 18:5, many other spots. So this idea that, just because there's some instructions that God has told mankind he wants to follow, and another guy comes in and says, oh, those are all a burden. Well, who are you going to listen to?
Right.
I want to listen to the creator of the universe who told me, hey, if I do this behavior, which is his behavior, I'm going to be blessed. And my Savior, you're right, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the Son of God, told me if I want eternal life to keep the commandments, and he says that in Matthew 19, verse 16 and 17. So they're not, how could they ever be burdensome? They literally is the behavior of the Father that the Messiah told us to keep, so that he would judge us and raise us to eternal life.
Right. Yeah, there's essentially, 4 or 5 books of actual instruction for us. And, of course, I'm including Jubilees in that. But compared to, if you go to your local courthouse into the law library, I mean, this entire library of books just full of laws. How many years of schooling do you need just to be certified to be a lawyer? And most lawyers, of course, don't know all the laws in the United States. So I just, to me, the comparison, talking about a burdensome law, I'm like, man, a few books for me to read and study that are directly from the creator of all things, in comparison to some other truly burdensome laws, to me, it's kind of a silly argument once you have the right perspective on it.
That's right. Yeah. And that's why we're always talking about context.
Yeah.
So, So this is a beautiful law that we're looking at, right? Which is a law of inheritance, whereas the women are respected equally, just like the man. And that's, I just think that it's because there's so many other laws that we've talked about in previous episodes where the women are respected and protected by the law of God. I would honestly say, to a greater degree than men are.
Yeah. Because
there's some caveats. We don't have time to go into it now, but he absolutely respects women and loves his daughters 100%. I mean, this is...
if you continue watching through our portions, once we're, uploading them, you'll see throughout this whole series, this is something I've been passionately pointing out because it's something I never knew about when I used to be opposed to this book.
That's right. When we get to Deuteronomy 22,
we
talk about women being protected from rape.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's better protection than women have in our current legal system today.
Yeah.
But people don't read the Bible to know, it's just, it's sad, which it's propaganda from the enemy.
Right.
Which is to get us away from the Father's instruction. And then also verse 18 kind of stuck out to me because it talks about Joshua having something unique, having the what?
The Spirit in him.
Yeah. He's got the Spirit in him. How did that happen? I thought the Spirit didn't happen until Acts 2.
Yeah, I think maybe he's a time traveler or something.
This is wild. So as you may have seen a few weeks ago when we covered Numbers chapter 11, 10, 11, and 12, the Spirit came down around the tent of meeting
Moses and Aaron had the elders from the tribes line up around the tent of meeting. The Spirit dropped down on the tent of meeting and then poured out onto the elders, just like in Acts 2.
Right.
Right? So much so, there was overflow that popped out on Eldad and Medad, who weren't even in that little area.
Yeah.
They were outside that area, and they got some overflow of it. Like, guys, the Father works the same way throughout all of time. It's only through horrible dispensation teachings that have taught us that he only worked in a certain vein with the Israelites in the wilderness, and then he worked in another vein when they were in the land, and then he works differently with Christians after Christ. That is nonsense. It's not in the Bible. In fact, if there's any quote-unquote dispensation of grace, it's simply the fact that he's our high priest now, since there's no temple, and he's actually ministering in the heavenly temple for us. So he's still doing the law. We're still commanded to keep the law as a part of our discipleship, yet we have a better high priest. That's the only difference in all of this. It's not the function of the law or the applicability to us in regards to obeying the law. It's simply that we have a better minister of the law on our behalf, which gives us greater access to the Spirit.
Yeah.
The same Spirit these guys had.
Yeah, there's a greater outpouring of it because of, first of all, his location. He's not just in a tabernacle in one area of land in Israel. He's up, above everyone in the firmament, in the sanctuary up there. Plus, as Sean said, he's perfect, he's sinless. There's nothing hindering him from performing the duties of atonement perfectly to the letter.
How many times have we seen Aaron show frailties and weaknesses already? Right? He's got some serious issues.
Yeah.
He showed some moments of faithfulness. Clearly, he was chosen for his obedience, but when it really got sticky, he showed some moments of cowardice.
Yeah.
So it's like we're not trying to slander Aaron, but it's simply as told to us in the scriptures, he caved and he gave into his own fear, and he had some issues. His sons obviously also had some issues. 2 of them cost them their life as a result of their disobedience. So this was the problem, like we've talked about in so many other episodes, as far as the priesthood itself, as Hebrews 7 says, is beset with weaknesses. The mortal priesthood that was coming down through Aaron, because they're just mortal. Right? They sin from time to time, but Yeshua was sinless, and he's now resurrected, glorified, at the right hand of the Father, ministering in the heavenly tabernacle. Hebrews 4:14, 1 Timothy 2:5, 1 John 1:9, Hebrews 5:7 through 10, and the reason that he's up there is to minister on our behalf, and since he's perfected, he doesn't have all these problems. So he has, he's the best mediator we could possibly ask for to have access to the Spirit of God.
Right.
It's amazing. This is why he said, I must go so that the Comforter can come.
Right.
So anyway, we won't get into that's a whole other video, but yeah.
Yeah, we just want to make it clear we're not acting like it's not something special that he's done for us.
Yeah. Okay?
It's just that the Spirit was available before, but it's just available in much greater measures now. So.
Did you notice at the end of the chapter, at the end of this chapter 27, we have Eliezer mentions the Urim again?
Yes, and not with the Thummim.
It's not. There's, I think, 8 or 9 mentions of the Urim and the Thummim, which are these 2 stones that went into the pouch of the high priest's breastplate area. I think they were below the breastplate itself. And the high priest, at this moment, since Aaron's already dead, we talked about that last week, but Eliezer, his son, has taken over as a high priest, and so now he has these stones in his breastpiece, which is for him to consult. And this is what it says, that since Moses has died, Joshua takes over, and he goes to consult the priest about, tough decisions, right? And that's what these 2 stones were supposedly to help with. And we tried to talk about this back in one of our Kingdom portions. I can't remember exactly.
Probably in Exodus.
It was, but I can't remember exactly which one. I think it was in a glimpse of our high priest or something like that. But it's like Exodus 28. I think these are mentioned. But what's unique about them is that we don't know what they do or how they work, right? They're just mentioned multiple times throughout the Old Testament as being a part of the regalia and the outfit and the wardrobe of the high priest, and that somehow, some way he would result in. But we found out in the Septuagint, the word Urim is translated as understanding, and the word Thummim is translated as truth. Yeah. So I think that's interesting. And they're also considered like clear stones, whatever that means. So essentially these guys they would go to try to find understanding and truth about a matter, which is really beautiful, in my opinion, the way it's worded. Anything else stick out for you in this chapter, sweetie?
No, I think we covered everything.
All right. I think, is it my turn now?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to go to 28, guys, if you're following along. Here in 28, verse 1. And then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Command the sons of Israel, and say to them, You should be careful to present my offerings, my food for my offerings by fire, of a soothing aroma to me at their appointed time. You shall say to them, This is the offering by fire which you shall offer to Yahweh, 2 male lambs 1 year old without defect, as a continual burnt offering every day. You shall offer the 1 lamb in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. Also 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering, mixed with 1/4 of a hin of beaten oil. It is a continual burnt offering which was ordained in Mount Sinai as a soothing aroma, an offering by fire to Yahweh. The other lamb you shall offer at twilight, as the grain offering of the morning, and as its drink offering you shall offer it, an offering by fire, a soothing aroma to Yahweh. Then on the Sabbath, 2 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering and its drink offering. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath in addition to the continual burnt offerings and its drink offerings. Then at the beginning of each of your months you shall present a burnt offering to Yahweh, 2 bulls and 1 ram, 7 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering for each bull, and 2/10 of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering for the 1 ram. And 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering for each lamb, for a burnt offering of a soothing aroma, an offering by fire to Yahweh. Their drink offering shall be 1/2 of a hin of wine for a bull, and 1/3 of a hin for the ram, and 1/4 of a hin for the lamb. This is the burnt offering of each month throughout the months of the year. And 1 male goat for a sin offering to the Lord. It shall be offered with its drink offering in addition to the continual burnt offering. Then, on the 14th day of the first month shall be Yahweh's Passover. On the 15th day of this month shall be a feast. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. You shall present an offering by fire, a burnt offering to Yahweh, 2 bulls and 1 ram, and 7 male lambs 1 year old, having them without defect. For their grain offering you shall offer fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for a bull, and 2/10 for the ram. 1/10 of an ephah you shall offer for each of the 7 lambs, and 1 male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you. You shall present these besides the burnt offering of the morning, which is a continual burnt offering. In this manner you shall present daily, for 7 days, the food of the offerings by fire, a soothing aroma to Yahweh. It shall be presented with this drink offering in addition to the continual burnt offering. And on the 7th day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. Also, on the day of the firstfruits, when you present a new grain offering to Yahweh in your feast of weeks, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. You shall offer a burnt offering for a soothing aroma to Yahweh. 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs 1 year old, and their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each bull, 2/10 for 1 ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. Also 1 male goat to make atonement for you. Besides the continual burnt offering and its grain offering, you shall present them with their drink offerings. They shall be without defect. All right, so there's Numbers 28. We're getting a little bit of a reiteration of some of these feasts that we read back in Leviticus 23, right?
Right.
Yahweh calls these his food.
Right.
That's in verse 1, Numbers 28:1. He says, these are my foods.
Right.
Right? So this is what we were trying to lovingly share with folks to try to take away the stigma of the big bad sacrifices in the Old Testament, right?
Yeah.
They're literally being instructed to have a barbecue with the Father, right? This was part of yes, there's atonement being made. There's strict regulations for how they are to slaughter, to take, to do with the blood if it was, depending on what type of sacrifice it was.
Right.
But ultimately, you're giving food to God, and then you get some of the food to eat as well.
Yeah.
This is why you're having a picnic of sorts. You're having a meal with the Father when they do a lot of these sacrifices. That's why he considers these feasts.
Right.
So, how is that burdensome?
To me, it's not. I mean, that's one of the... Honestly, that's... Maybe it's because I'm a foodie, but that's one of the things that I look forward to most about the kingdom is the food we're going to get to eat.
Yeah. So, well, let me put it like this: if I wanted to invite, all of your family and all of my family over to our house in the backyard on the porch, I got the grill going, and there was no. When say this was in a different reality where there was no store that you could just go buy a bunch of packaged meats.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I had a goat. Right? Because I was, maybe I had a lot of goats and some cows, So that means in order to feed everybody, I'm going to have to know the exact proportions of how much meat I need, right? So I would go take a goat, I would have to slaughter that goat. I would then have to prepare the meat that can be eaten versus the meat that cannot be eaten. as well as the fat, the bones, all the other things, which we got all these instructions back in Leviticus chapters 1 through 7 to tell us how they would prepare the animals themselves so that they could then cook the animal's meat and then eat it, depending on which sacrifice we're doing. So this is all we're reading about, guys. We already do these same motions in our current society already. It's just you don't see, when someone says, "Hey, I'm about to, slaughter a cow. I'm going to have half a rack. Do you want some meat?" Like, you don't see that process happening. But that's all we're getting described in many of these sacrifices, is they're starting from the beginning of the process with an animal that's still alive to get that meat prepared, ready, with literal recipes, as we just read about some of these recipes they were supposed to do, to have these meals daily. So it's like this is like just basic common behavior. If you're trying to honor somebody, you make a meal for them.
Yeah, I mean, even in our modern society, this concept of a barbecue where you say, "Oh, I'll make the steaks, you bring the drinks, you guys bring the potato salad." Like, even in that situation, people are like bringing their own, offerings to put on the table for everyone to partake of. So it seems to be an innate human trait to want to sit down and break bread together and have a meal.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really, interesting to me. And, go ahead.
And as we've said in many other episodes, we always like to remind folks, everything we just been describing about having a meal with God, he calls worship. Like, this is the literal definition in the Old Testament of worship. It's not raising your hands and singing a song at church. It's this process of making a meal with the Father according to his instructions, according to the ingredients he's asked you to make the meal with, and he calls that worship. Guys, this is so easy. Like, this is not...
Right.
It's not burdensome.
Another thing I like to remind people is that, there's a lot of arguments about vegetarianism before the flood and what God truly intended for us to be eating and what he didn't intend for us to be eating. And I just like to point out to people that God's work is fully finished in us when the kingdom comes and all is fulfilled and we're resurrected and we're living with him forever. And we are going to be eating these animals with him forever because we're going to be worshiping him forever. So you really have to accept the fact that clean animals were created with a purpose, and that purpose is to be food upon the altar. Mm-hmm. So when you start looking at it that way, it's a little easier to, get over the cognitive dissonance, I think is really what it is. Right. I love animals just as much as the next person. I love all the videos of the little baby goats in pajamas and everything like that. But I'm also aware that those animals were created with a certain purpose, and that purpose is to be food on the altar. So,
yeah. Well, not every single clean animal, but lots of them. So absolutely, sweetie, and this is something that I think that a lot of folks miss, which is why we try to remind folks of the kingdom. Keep that in context, right? Yeah. Because this is the behavior that he's giving to the Israelites in these moments, where he's reminding them about these sacrifices. This is what the third time he's reminding them about these three feasts, these three big feasts that happen throughout the year, as well as he's talking about the daily sacrifices and the Sabbath sacrifices. And he's trying to just lovingly remind them, like, this is how you can worship me. And that's all it really is. And it was designed this way from the beginning. And we even have other texts that tell us these things are kept in heaven. The book of Jubilees chapter 6 says the Feast of Weeks, which was mentioned in this chapter that we just read in Numbers, says that they kept the Feast of Weeks since creation began. Right. So that means every year the angels and the Father are doing the exact procedures that he gave, since these are the instructions of his ways that he gave for mankind to practice. So this is, I think, Leviticus 25:2 or 25:3, that he wants us to practice his ways. That's why he's given us these instructions. So this is not, this is actually what hopefully we can get excited about.
Right.
Not that we can fear, because none of this was intended for to be fearful.
Right.
It was always intended, like, he's like, look, I'm giving you a way you can actually draw close to me.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, it's simple as making a meal.
Yeah, it's not a punishment. It's not a burden. You didn't bring sacrifices only when you needed atonement for sin.
You don't have to walk in your hands up Mount Kilimanjaro and get to the top, and do 5 backflips and then chant and meditate until you reach a higher plane. Like, you don't have to do anything extraneous or strange
It's simply making a meal according to his instructions. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful, beautiful scriptures. Anything else in this chapter? I mean, we're not going to really go into much about the details of the feast. We cover those really thoroughly in our video, The Kingdom of God in the Feasts of Leviticus 23. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. We do it thoroughly.
Yeah,
so.
I will summarize that we go over how these feasts are fulfilled in the kingdom. So there's this programming that's layered into us to just look for Yeshua in the feast, and how did he fulfill the feast, and when does he fulfill the next set of feasts. But when you actually start to understand the kingdom and all the promises that go in with it, the symbolism of the feast is very clear, that they're all pointing to the kingdom, and that's when they're actually fulfilled. And one thing we'll point out, which we have mentioned before, but it's now that we're in the actual chapter, we'll go ahead and point it out, is going to be in verse 26, where it speaks of in your Feast of Weeks when you bring in your first fruits.
That's right.
Let me just read it so I make sure that I'm
verse 26.
quoting it properly. So he says here, also on the day of the first fruits, when you present a new grain offering to the Lord in your Feast of Weeks, you shall have a holy convocation, you shall do no laborious work. So I'm pointing this out to point out to people, this is another bit of programming that we've had layered into us, is to think that this Feast of First Fruits actually takes place on or around one of the days within the week of unleavened bread. That comes from a misunderstanding of the wave sheaf offering that's offered when they enter the land. We go over this in the other video. But I just wanted to point out Shavuot and first fruits are actually on the same day. So first fruits comes 50 days after they start the count after unleavened bread and all of that. So when you're celebrating first fruits, when does that happen? That happens on the same day as Shavuot. It's a twofold feast. And the only book that actually tells us that clearly and explicitly is Jubilees.
Right. It's in Numbers 28. It's in Leviticus 23. It's in Exodus 23. But the one book that actually makes it in a very clear statement, instead of you having to put these all three together and figure it out, is Jubilees, chapter 6.
Right, and when we point this out to people, it seems to be some cognitive dissonance going on, and they all of a sudden want to start splitting up into, there's multiple first fruits offerings, and I've heard people say there's many as 6 to 8 first fruits offerings, and those are all special days. But that is not what the text says. There is one day of the first fruits. And yes, there are times where he talks about bringing your first fruits in the tithe and things like that. But the actual Feast of First Fruits, where there's a holy convocation commanded, that takes place in the Feast of Weeks on the same day as Shavuot. And it says it right here in Numbers, but it's very clear in Jubilees. It says this is a twofold feast.
Yeah, actually on the same day.
Yes.
Yeah, it's no mincing words. It's very specific.
Yeah, so Jubilees has support here in the approved canon.
That's right. All right. Anything else in this chapter? I think that we've probably covered it thoroughly. Guys, we're going to go into chapter 29.
Now in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall also have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. It will be to you a day for blowing trumpets. You shall offer a burnt offering as a soothing aroma to the Lord, 1 bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs, 1 year old without defect. Also their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. Offer 1 male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you, besides the burnt offering and the new moon and its grain offering, and the continual burnt offerings and its grain offering, and their drink offerings, according to their ordinance, for a soothing aroma, an offering by fire to the Lord. Then on the 10th day of this 7th month you shall have a holy convocation, and you shall humble yourselves. You shall not do any work. You shall present a burnt offering to the Lord as a soothing aroma, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs 1 year old, having them without defect. And their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the 1 ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the sin offering of atonement and the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, and their drink offerings. Then on the 15th day of the 7th month you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work, and you shall observe a feast to the Lord for 7 days. You shall present a burnt offering, an offering by fire as a soothing aroma to the Lord, 13 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs 1 year old, which are without defect, and their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each of the 2 rams, and 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the second day, 12 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance. And 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, and their drink offerings. Then on the third day, 11 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the fourth day, 10 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the fifth day, 9 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the sixth day, 8 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offerings, its grain offering, and its drink offerings. Then on the seventh day, 7 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. On the 8th day you shall have a solemn assembly. You shall do no laborious work, but you shall present a burnt offering and offering by fire as a soothing aroma to the Lord, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bull, for the ram, and for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, and its drink offering. You shall present these to the Lord at your appointed times, besides your votive offerings and your freewill offerings, for your burnt offerings, and for your grain offerings, and for your drink offerings, and for your peace offerings. Moses spoke to the sons of Israel in accordance with all that the Lord had commanded Moses.
Well, thank you, sweetie.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything stick out to you right off the bat?
Well, it's interesting to me here that we have the Day of Atonement being mentioned, and there is no mention of fasting on this day.
That's right. Yeah.
It says to humble ourselves, and then right immediately after, it says do no work.
That's right.
So that's how we humble ourselves.
That's right. That's the context. It doesn't say take a fast on a day that you're not supposed to fast.
Not supposed to fast, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Send your angry letters to the P.O. Box below. Just kidding.
That's right.
People seem to have a real issue with
They
this
do.
particular topic when we
They
bring
do.
it up and point these things out. So that's why I'm joking about it.
They do, because it's a strong tradition from Judaism,
Yeah.
which is to fast on the Day of Atonement.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, this is the same religion, separate religion called Judaism, that Yeshua said they put their traditions above the commandments of God.
Right.
And this is an example of that, right? Because all throughout Leviticus and here in Numbers, when it mentions the Day of Atonement, fasting is not a part of this.
Right.
And it's simply to humble your souls in the manner of treating it like a Sabbath and not doing work on this day. In fact, Leviticus 23:32 calls this day specifically a Sabbath. So it's just simply don't do any work.
Yeah, and some people might think, well, how is that afflicting myself by not going to my job? I hate my job. Well, it's not necessarily, some of us have jobs that we really love. You know, for me, every week, you know, when I put my wire wrapping stuff down for the Sabbath, it is a struggle for me to not pick those up. It's a test of my obedience to not sit and do something that I enjoy doing that I also make money doing. So for some people, yeah, it's absolutely afflicting their soul to not go to work an extra day. It's not just the weekly Sabbath now. You're also adding extra days where you're not working.
Yeah, in the 10th, I mean, this is the 10th, so on the first day of the month of the 7th month, there's the Feast of Trumpets.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the 10th, Feast of Unleavened, or the Day of Atonement. Then you got the 15th through the 22nd is Feast of Sukkot, also called Feast of Tabernacles. And then on the 23rd, which is the 8th day, you have the Feast of Ingathering, also called the Feast of Addition. So there's quite a lot of activity in that 7th month. So when this is thrown in the mix as well, that's just another day that you're not at your normal job. So there's a lot going on. And I know last year this was actually something, or was it 2 years ago? This was something that the 7th month, I was taking off work to observe these days, and I was like, man, I really pray, and the Father allows us to continue to meet our bills properly and
Right.
for everything that we're obligated for financially, because I'm trusting you to take these days off, you know what I mean? And to celebrate your memorials that you've asked us to in faith and belief. So it's, it definitely is a humbling moment.
Yeah.
Right? You're really putting your trust in the Father. I just like that all these instructions that we keep reading about, I know it can seem a little repetitive at times, because especially when you're just hearing us read it, and it may not be something you're actively doing. So like, to the viewer that's watching us now and us, we're sitting in our home, we're filming this, we're reading these words, you're listening to it, you're reading along hopefully, but none of us are actually in the temple amongst the congregation of Israel, seeing Levite priests walk around, seeing the tabernacle and the tent of meeting, or whatever the scenario was, depending on which century they were in. None of us are in that live circumstance so that we can start knowing, it's this feast day, so then I bring these animals with these instructions. So that's why, as these young kids would have seen this stuff growing up in this culture, by the time they're an adult, they know what to bring at Sukkot, right? All the different days that we just read, days 1 through 8, through the Feast of Tabernacles, which is also called Sukkot, they know which sacrifices are required those days. It's like second nature. But for us, we're so removed from that culture, and we're so removed from that experience, we've never truly done it ourselves. That's where it sometimes can seem lethargic to go and read through all this. But what I love about it is the instructions themselves are so specific. Even if you were in the culture, and even if you were participating actively and literally bringing forward your 1-year-old lamb, you have to make sure it's a 1-year-old lamb, right? You have to bring forward the specific instructions. So what I playfully would suggest is that all of these ordinances for bringing forward these meals that they're preparing, and these specific recipes and instructions, is to keep you on your toes, is so that you don't just get in the habit of going through the motions. But there may be other spiritual significance to each animal that's brought, and what this means, the fourth the hin of oil, and the certain spices you would bring. But as a whole, if you're going to cook something and you're following a recipe that's different than the one you did the night before, then you have to pay attention. So you're actively, with your heart, mind, soul, body, you're engaged in worshiping the Father, and you're not just going through the motions. At least that was his desire.
Yeah,
right?
He was not fond of it if you were only going through the motions. That's not what he wanted. Those were all the times when people rip those verses out of context that say, I do not delight in your burnt offerings and things like that. They pull that out to show, his sacrifices were a burden. No, the burden was it was a burden for him to have people who weren't fully faithfully serving him walking into his temple and acting like they were.
That's right, because the parts you mentioned in the prophets later, during the apostasy of Israel, the priesthood as well as the people were going through the motions to do some of these sacrifices, at the same time worshiping the Baals. So they had this dual hypocrisy that was happening, and the Father was like, you think I respect your burnt offerings? I don't. They're loathsome to me because you do not do them with the right heart. You're engaged in active idolatry at the time. So it's a learning process, and he wants us to be very involved with all of us as a part of desiring to do concepts, to obey what he's told us is good for us. Not just to do it because he said it, but because we desire to do it. This, I've heard people to talk about, is the difference between the spirit of the law and just the letter of the law. Being that you're not just following it because you're told to, but because you want to, right? You're loving people because you choose to, out of your own volition and out of your own desire to worship the Father and walk with him, not just simply because, I've got to, Like that's the letter of the law. The spirit of the law is your desire, your zeal, right? We're going to our first pairings, and I think our first one is going to be in the book of Ezekiel, just a few short verses in chapter 37, verses 24 through 28, if you're following along. So here in verse 24, my servant David will be king over them, and they will have one shepherd. They will walk in my ordinances and keep my statutes and observe them. They will live on the land that I gave to Jacob my servant, in which your fathers lived, and they will live on it, they and their sons and their sons' sons forever. And David my servant will be their prince forever. I will make a covenant of peace with them. It will be an everlasting covenant with them. I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in their midst forever. My dwelling place also will be with them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. And the nations will know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies Israel, when my sanctuary is in their midst forever. So there it is, right?
Yeah.
We're promised this covenant of peace. Corporately, the nation of Israel, when he sets his sanctuary in our midst forever, which is the kingdom come, okay? Father and Son, kingdom, New Jerusalem come down. His sanctuary is in our midst forever. We are made a covenant of peace with. Why? Because we are resurrected into this Melchizedek priesthood, right? Which is the priesthood of the kingdom. So this is just a beautiful thing. So this is why in Exodus 19, verse 5, at the base of Mount Sinai, when this covenant's being renewed with the descendants of Abraham, all of Israel there with Moses and Aaron, and he tells them, I'll make you a set-apart holy priesthood, right? So this is the fulfillment of that we just read, that everyone who's in this covenant in faith and belief, the promise is that we're resurrected to be a part of this Melchizedek priesthood, which is what Jesus has already been resurrected and been made a part of.
Yeah.
Right? That's why he's the high priest of the Melchizedek order, Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7 through 10. Also, Psalm 110, verse 1 through 4. So that's our promise as well, and it's called a covenant of peace. Right. So he will make peace with us because his law is written on our hearts. We'll never fail to do it. Therefore, there'll never be enmity between us and him ever again. So this is the promise of what Yeshua has made possible for us, what's going to be fulfilled at the resurrection on the day of the Lord, which he's, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful promise.
Yeah.
So do you want to read the next parent, sweetie? It's going to be in Psalm 24, verse 7 through 10.
Yeah, I can do that. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O eternal doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O eternal doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory.
Thank you, sweetie.
Sure.
All right, so we've got the King of glory going through the eternal doors, the eternal gate, the New Jerusalem, right? Because the one on the ground, when the psalmist is writing this, was burned to the ground.
Right.
By Nebuchadnezzar. So, and then the second one that's built later was burned by Caesar, right? So it's like this is a beautiful millennial reign description and song that's being sung in a prophetic sense about the future coming kingdom of God and, Yeshua being the King of glory.
Yeah, and the reason that we're pairing this, because our theme, sometimes it's hard to come up with a theme with some of the blocks of Torah portions that we have, because the chapters themselves are all over the place as far as themes go. So sometimes we just settle on something, and this one we settled because we have Joshua being given this authority. It's very obviously a typology and foreshadowing of Christ. He's bringing them out, he's letting them in.
That's right.
They're not sheep without a shepherd. So that was where we pulled our theme from, just in case you're wondering, well, why did they pair that with this portion?
Just like we saw Joshua at the very end of, I think, 28, or 27, where he would go to the priest Eleazar to get understanding and truth, right? So he was leader over the people, but at the same time, the priesthood was more like the actual ruler itself.
Right.
So there's a kind of a shared dichotomy there, between these ideas. But what's interesting is that we have the Son of God and the authority of the Father as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, yet Yahweh calls himself King of Israel, since he is the ultimate authority. For example, like when they actually, into the days of Saul, tried to choose a king, and he's like, well, they're not really rejecting a king, they're rejecting me. I was their king, right?
Yeah.
So this whole concept, and this is where people like to tie the two together, and this is where the Trinitarian concept comes in, because people like to believe that, this just means that Yahweh became Jesus as the Son. But the scriptures themselves tell us that the Son was with the Father before time began, and that his whole purpose was to come as the Son of God. It's not the Father coming, it's the Son coming as the Son of God. 1 John chapter 4. And his whole purpose was to glorify the Father. So this is what he can be in the Father's authority and agency, as he says in Matthew 28:17, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to him. But he's also called the King of Kings, because he's the one we're going to see and interact with as God, especially the people that are not resurrected. Right? So I personally believe, as resurrected saints, we'll be able to see the face of the Father who dwells in unapproachable light, because we'll be made of light at the resurrection as well. It's a totally different type of spirit nature we're given, according to, Yeshua's resurrected body in 1 Corinthians 15. But the regular people on the outside of the kingdom, their only ability to interact with the Father is going to be through the Son. So they're going to be able to see Yeshua, just like he exemplified in his resurrection body in the Gospels, but they're not going to be able to see the Father. So they'll call Yeshua God. Mm-hmm. He's called the King of Kings, the King of Glory, the Lord of Lords, because he's synonymous with the Father, but he's a separate being. It's very simple. This is a very common practice in all of kingdoms in the past, where you had a king, and then the prince, the son of the king, would go out in the king's authority and be treated just like a king. Yeah. Simple. That's what the Father's doing with his Son here.
Yeah, any insult to, or if it's not a prince, an emissary, you know? So anytime the king is sending someone out, it's legally, if you do something wrong to that emissary, it's legally the same as doing it to the king himself.
That's right. Yeah, and this is why they would show homage and honor to angels whenever angel of God would show up, because they realized, oh, the Father sent this guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to treat him like the Father. It's called agency, guys. If you haven't seen the video, I go over this in great detail. It's one of my morning cup of contexts. It's called No One's Heard the Father. And if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend looking that up on my channel. It's in their playlists called #Son of the Father, or just on its own in the morning cup playlist. It'll be very, very helpful to you when you're reading about concepts through Scripture between the promises of Yeshua and what he's for, as well as compared to the interactions of angels and what they're for. So, all right, so our next pairing is actually in Revelation chapter 15. We're going to be reading just 2 verses 2 through 4. Here in chapter 15, verse 2, "And I saw something like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those who had been victorious over the beast and his image, and the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, holding harps of God. And they sang the song of Moses, the bondservant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are your works, O Lord God, the Almighty. Righteous and true are your ways, King of the nations. Who will not fear, O Lord, and glorify your name? For you alone are holy. For all the nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed." Okay, so it's Revelation 15, short snippet of what's called the Song of Moses and the Song of the Lamb.
Yeah. Why would the Lamb have the same song as Moses?
That's wild, right? So this is just a wonderful little passage here where they're singing a snippet of, what was it, back in Exodus 15, the Song of Moses, and they're singing it in heaven after the resurrection, which is beautiful. By the way, the Song of Moses in Exodus 15 has prophecy about the millennial reign, so it's that's why they're put together like that. But and of course, he's also singing about Yeshua, whose righteous acts have been revealed to the world. The nations will worship him. This is the kingdom come, and this is just it's going to be beautiful, because the feast that we read about here in Numbers, that's going to be people are going to be aware of that. I mean, they're going to be literally required to keep them. So it's just a beautiful promise that's coming of ultimate peace on earth. So our next pairing we're going to jump into is Jubilees chapter 31, verses 18 through 20. So here in verse 18, "And to Judah he said, May the Lord give thee strength and power to tread down all that hate thee, and a prince shalt thou be, and you and one of your sons over the sons of Jacob. May your name and the name of your sons go forth and traverse every land and region. Then shall the Gentiles fear before your face, and all the nations shall quake, and all the peoples shall quake. In you shall be the help of Jacob, and in you be found the salvation of Israel. And when you sit on the throne of honor of your righteousness, there shall be great peace for all the seed of the sons of the beloved. Blessed be he that blesses you, and all that hate you and afflict you and curse you shall be rooted out and destroyed from the earth and be accursed." Okay, Jubilees chapter 31. This is this fun little moment where we've got the boys, Levi and Judah, were brought before Isaac, and then Isaac is pronouncing a blessing over Levi and Judah. And he gives Levi the priesthood, or he pronounces blessing of priesthood. He doesn't give it to him. Pronounces blessing of priesthood, and then also, as we just read, a blessing of rulership for Judah, but also explaining how from him the salvation of Israel will arise from his seed, as well as what we just read in Revelation 15, right? That all the nations will come because of that and reverence this point of righteousness and honor, this throne that is going to come out of Judah, which we know Yeshua of Nazareth sits on. So it's just a beautiful prophecy.
Right. I think, we obviously spend a lot of time drawing stark focus to Yeshua's priesthood and his status as high priest.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, we just felt like, it makes more sense to be focusing on his kingship as well, because that's the unique thing about the Melchizedek priesthood that he's bringing to earth. It's this reuniting of these two offices that were not officially split at this point in time, but later on, when they were given those duties at a certain point, those two offices were basically split into a separate, so you didn't have someone who was a king and a priest both at once.
Which is what Melchizedek is.
Exactly. Yeah. You had the line of the priests and, the line that, rulership would come from. So this is that moment, and we've read all about Levi from,
right.
Jubilees in our kingdom portions, and we felt, let's give Judah a mention, because there's also this aspect of him being a king. So when we have Joshua, as Sean was saying earlier, Joshua is the leadership role there, but he still goes to the priest.
That's right.
Joshua was not a king priest. He was
That's right.
not even a king, but he was the leader, but he also went to a priest. So
yes. So it was later that the line of Judah developed the
right.
actual kingship. And then, of course, Yeshua came from the line of Judah. And as she's saying, this is the kingdom that we've been reading about that's going to come to the earth, is ruled by Yeshua, who is a king and a priest at the same time. And that is the fulfillment of what was started thousands of years before that, which I think is just, it's so, man, the Father has just got such an amazing way of just drawing attention to so many different things throughout history and using his people to do it at the same time, even through their mistakes.
Right.
So this is, because the line of Judah, there was a lot of mistakes with Judah. Judah wasn't exactly the same caliber of character as his brother Levi was. So that's why Levi got the priesthood, because remember, like I said before, he was supposed to be set apart, being more obedient than the people around him. So Levi got the priesthood, and Judah still was blessed to get the honor of the rulership. And I think it's unique because he even talks about it in the Testament of Judah, how he was still bestowed that great honor, even though Levi was better than him.
Yeah.
And he acknowledged that,
And he wasn't the firstborn.
That's neither was Levi,
Yeah.
because Reuben, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
So
Reuben kind of messed up.
Reuben's just happy to be alive.
Yeah.
Let's just put it like that. So, yeah, he got some serious mercy showed to him.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So our next pair we're going to run to real quick is going to be in the book of Enoch, chapter 61. We're just going to read from verses 7 through 11 real quick, and this is also going to be about our beautiful Melchizedek, Yeshua of Nazareth, our king priest, during the millennial reign. So here in verse 7, "And that one with their first words they blessed, and extolled, and lauded with wisdom, and they were wise in utterance and in the spirit of life. And the Lord of spirits placed the elect one on the throne of glory, and he shall judge all the works of the holy above in the heaven, and in the balance shall their deeds be weighed. And when he shall lift up his countenance to judge their secret ways according to the word of the name of the Lord of spirits, and their path according to the way of the righteous judgment of the Lord of spirits, then they shall all with one voice speak and bless and glorify and extol and sanctify the name of the Lord of spirits. And he will summon all the hosts of heaven and all the holy ones above, the hosts of God, the cherubim, the seraphim, the ophanim, and all the angels of power, all the angels of principalities, and the elect one, and the powers on the earth and over the water. And on that day they shall raise with one voice and bless and glorify and extol in the spirit of faith, and in the spirit of wisdom, and in the spirit of patience, and in the spirit of mercy, and in the spirit of judgment and peace, and the spirit of goodness. And they will say with one voice, Blessed is he, and may the name of the Lord of spirits be blessed forever and ever." Man, Enoch is a great book. Chapter 61. I love this passage here, sweetie, because it lets you know that in this moment, when Yeshua is crowned and set on his throne of glory, as verse 8 says, verse 10 and 11 says, then the Lord will summon everything in heaven, even the elect one, as verse 10 talked about. So everything in heaven stops, and then with one voice at the same time, they bless the Father, the Yeshua included. And Yeshua just got, he's set on the throne of glory. This is beautiful, guys. We didn't have time to read the rest of the chapter. There's more context here because it talks about the righteous being resurrected and things like that. So this is happening at the kingdom come. Okay, so we already know that right now Yeshua is sitting at the right hand of the Father as a mediator as well. But this is a moment where I think everything in heaven is going to be able to see him actually sit on the throne of glory, which means we're going to be there too, by the way. Again, I just didn't have time to read all the passages in this chapter, but it's going to be an incredible moment. And this also shows a strict dichotomy between the Father and the Son.
Right.
So the Father sets the Son on the throne of glory, and the Son turns and praises the Father. Just like in John 17, verse 4 and 5, he says, I've accomplished what you sent me to do, and I've glorified your name. So now glorify me as I used to be when I was with you before the world began. It's, there's a Father and a Son. He sent his Son. It's wonderful.
Right.
And we just give him all praise and glory because he is in the agency of the Father. He's in the authority of the Father. So we look to him as our King, our God, our priest, our the lover of our soul, our Redeemer. He is the one to whom we give our praise and adoration. So as well as we pray to the Father, right? Because the Father is the one of good gifts, the Father of heavenly lights, in whom there's no change in your shifting shadows. So there is a dichotomy. It's a Father and Son tandem. That was the way it was meant to be. That's why the book of Enoch later in chapter 105, it says in verse 1 and 2, when the Father and the Son descend down to the earth. So it specifically says both are coming down to the earth. And that's just, it's also there in Ezekiel 37, but you just have to read slowly. So it's such a beautiful promise, guys. The kingdom's coming. This is the gospel, the kingdom of God, which is what we focus on here on this channel so you can understand it. Why? Because Yeshua said only 1 out of 4 people really get it. So we're praying that you're one of these 1 out of 4 people watching this that not only gets it but runs with it. And he said those who get it and run with it will be the ones that will produce 30, 60, and 100-fold return, because it's such a powerful message that not only does it open up the scriptures to you and it'll make them so easy to understand, but it's also going to help you open up everything Yeshua talked about, all of his parables, and makes all of everything he talked about super easy to understand. This is what he taught his disciples in Luke 9 and Matthew 10, where he told them to go out, preach the gospel, the kingdom of God. This is what Paul said he was preaching in Acts chapter 28, verse 30 and 31, that he preached the gospel, the kingdom of God, concerning Jesus Christ, who's the Lord. So they all knew the central message, which is even the same message that Enoch was preaching before the flood. It is the Father has promised he's going to come down at some point with his kingdom, and he's going to make everything good. So, because if we could put a bumper sticker phrase on the Bible,
right,
it would be the Father getting us back to his garden. That's the whole narrative of the storyline. It's the promise of the coming kingdom of God. So we hope that it edifies you. We hope that it sparks a fire in your heart to know his word better, because it's such a beautiful, beautiful story, and it helps break through the lies of the enemy just like that. I mean, it's really will help you. Sweetie, any concluding remarks before we finish this week?
Same as always. If you made it all the way through to the end of the video, thanks for sticking around. And I just always like to remind everybody that our heart here, it's very simple. We just want to help you understand this book so that you can go and help others understand this book. And the only way to do that is to keep everything in its proper context, because why? Context creates comprehension.
I don't think they can see that.
Yeah, it's on the back of our shirts.
Okay, yeah, it's on the back.
Around?
Yeah, you can see that. Okay.
Sorry, that was a poor reveal. But yeah, context creates comprehension, and the only way you're going to understand these things if you keep everything in context. This is going to help you always be ready with an answer, and it's going to help you understand the book better and get closer to your Creator in all kinds of ways. So we just really love you guys, and we appreciate you showing up, and we hope you still stick around for when we re-upload, the older portions, because like I said, it's been a year, it's been a while.
They will be remastered.
They'll be remastered, but like I said, lots of information, lots of meat to digest. There's still going to be really great studies, so don't abandon us just because we're not going to have any new ones for a little while. So.
We really appreciate you folks. Thanks for joining us this week, and we hope that you have a great Sabbath. And come see us next week. Shabbat Shalom.
Have a good week, guys.